Helena never expected a simple Saturday to stir anything unusual inside her. At 34, she carried herself with that quiet blend of independence and warmth that women admired and men rarely understood. Romance? She'd long tucked that idea into the back pocket of her life, folded neatly beside old hopes she no longer dared to unfold. But as she guided her young niece through the mall's glass doors, the scent of cinnamon and pine wrapped around her like a soft embrace, the kind that reminds a woman of everything she once believed in. And somewhere between the twinkling lights and the cheerful carols, the day began whispering that something magical might be waiting. The mall was alive in a way that only December could bring. Children tugged their parents' hands, families huddled around displays, and every corner seemed sprinkled with sparkling promises. Helena felt her niece's tiny fingers clutching hers with excited urgency, pulling her toward the towering Christmas tree. She watched the little girl's eyes widen with wonder, and a warmth spread across Helena's chest, not the kind tied to nostalgia, but the kind that makes a woman pause and breathe a little deeper. Yet even in the midst of all that joy, Helena kept a practical mind, telling herself this was just another holiday outing. But then she saw him, the mall's Santa Claus, seated on his grand red chair, greeting a crowd of little ones, as if he had all the time and tenderness in the world. There was something striking about him that Helena felt before she even understood it, a spark, subtle, but real enough to ripple through her like a quiet surprise. His eyes were kind, the sort that made people feel seen, and his laughter carried a warmth that reached farther than the costume allowed. Helena blinked, embarrassed by the flutter inside her. She shook her head, silently scolding herself for being caught off guard by something so absurd, especially now, yet the feeling lingered as though it had something more to say in the moments ahead. Helena tried to steady herself, reminding her heart that it had no business reacting to a man in a red suit. Still, as she moved closer with her niece, she couldn't help noticing the way he leaned in to listen to each child, giving them his full attention as if their tiny dreams mattered. That sincerity pulled at something inside her, something she didn't realize had been gathering dust. She felt an almost forgotten softness rise from within, making her cheeks warm. Maybe it was the holiday glow, maybe the nostalgia of childhood, or maybe, just maybe, it was something far less rational. Her niece bounced excitedly, clutching a handwritten list of wishes that wobbled in her small hands. Helena smiled, half distracted, half lost in that odd feeling she didn't want to analyze too closely. The lights overhead shimmered in shades of gold and ruby, casting a gentle glow on the scene. Families snapped photos, babies cried, teenagers laughed as they pretended not to care. It was a chaos she usually approached with patient amusement, but now she found herself strangely aware of every detail, as if the entire mall were conspiring to draw her toward that one red chair. Helena shook off the thought and guided her niece forward as the line progressed. The closer they got, the more nervous she felt, though she had no reason to be. She wasn't the one meeting Santa, after all, yet her chest tightened with a sensation she hadn't felt since her 20s, back when unexpected moments could still make her pulse race. She tried to ground herself, inhaling the scent of caramel popcorn drifting from the food court, but beneath all those familiar smells and sounds, a quiet anticipation stirred. It nudged at her, hinting that this encounter, however silly it seemed, was just beginning to open a door she didn't know she'd closed. When they finally reached the front of the line, Helena felt her niece tug free and run toward Santa with a burst of delight. Helena followed more slowly, suddenly aware of her own heartbeat thudding like soft drum beats in her chest. Santa greeted the little girl with a warm laugh, one that carried a tone too genuine to be mere performance. Watching him up close, Helena noticed the gentle way he adjusted his posture, making himself smaller so her niece felt braver. There was something unmistakably tender in that gesture, something that made Helena's breath hitch as though an old, hidden part of her had just woken up. Santa looked up, just briefly, and their eyes met. It lasted no more than a second, but it was enough to unsettle her composure. His gaze wasn't intrusive or overly bold. It was simply warm, curious, almost familiar in a way she couldn't explain. Helena felt a faint tremor inside, the kind that comes when life shifts in the tiniest, quietest ways. She quickly pretended to straighten her niece's coat, hoping her blush wasn't as obvious as it felt. It was ridiculous, she told herself. Absolutely ridiculous to react like this to a stranger in a costume. Yet the moment clung to her like a soft echo. Trying to regain her footing, Helena stepped back to give her niece space for the photo. Parents around her chatted, kids squealed, and the photographer's flash kept blinking like little bursts of captured memories. But Helena was somewhere else entirely, drifting in the strange awareness that something about this man, this Santa, had pulled at her. She didn't understand it, and she wasn't sure she wanted to. Still, as the photographer called for the next pose, Helena felt a quiet pull inside her, an unspoken invitation from the day itself, nudging her toward whatever was coming next. Helena settled beside the velvet ropes while her niece chatted animatedly with Santa, her tiny legs swinging in excitement. From this distance, Helena could observe him without the pressure of being seen, and that gave her a strange sense of safety. She watched the way he leaned in, the way he matched each child's energy with gentle humor or patient calm. There was a natural kindness about him, something that couldn't be faked under any amount of costume fluff. It made her wonder how many people ever noticed the person behind the beard, and why she suddenly cared so much about discovering who he really was. As her niece handed Santa the little wish list, he responded with such sincerity that Helena felt her chest warm again. He laughed at something the girl said, and she laughed back, the sound bright and innocent enough to soften anyone's heart. Helena felt a tug, an emotional one, like watching a memory being rewritten in real time, a memory of childhood she didn't quite have, but wished she did. Maybe that was why she couldn't look away. Or maybe it was because every time he smiled, it felt like he understood more about people than he let on. Then Santa lifted his gaze toward Helena, just casually, as if checking for the approving eyes of a parent, but the second their eyes met, something shifted. He said a playful comment to her niece, a teasing little line that was clearly meant for Helena's ears. Her cheeks flushed before she could stop them. It wasn't flirtatious in an over-the-top way, just warm, unexpected, and strangely intimate, the kind of moment that sneaks into a woman's heart before she has time to guard it. And Helena felt something unfurl inside her, nudging her closer to a curiosity she wasn't prepared to admit yet. Helena crossed her arms lightly, trying to ground herself as she watched her niece giggle through the photo session. Santa's patience seemed endless. He wasn't just entertaining children. He was making them feel important, seen, utterly valued in that tiny moment. Helena felt a familiar ache rise in her chest, the kind that comes when someone reminds you of kindness you didn't realize you'd been missing. She wondered what kind of man chose to spend his December evenings like this. Someone with a gentle heart? Someone who believed in small joys? The questions started gathering in her mind like snowflakes. Her niece hopped off Santa's lap and ran to Helena, proudly clutching the printed photo. Helena laughed softly, brushing a loose curl from the girl's forehead, but her attention drifted back to him. He gave her a faint smile, one that seemed to acknowledge the unspoken thread between them. Helena felt her breath catch in that quiet, unexpected exchange. It was more than politeness. It felt personal, meaningful in a way she couldn't quite name. And that sensation, the one she tried so hard to ignore earlier, pressed gently against her again. As they stepped aside to let the next family in, Helena felt herself linger instead of walking away. She pretended to adjust her bag strap, but really she was stealing one last glance. Santa crouched down to greet the next child, but not before giving Helena a quick, playful nod, as if he knew she was still watching. Her stomach fluttered with a mix of embarrassment and something sweeter, something that hinted at a spark warming into curiosity. And it was in that subtle, private moment that Helena realized she wasn't quite ready to leave the magic of this encounter behind just yet. Helena guided her niece toward the bench nearby, pretending she just needed a moment to organize their things. In truth, she wanted to stay close enough to observe him without seeming obvious. She watched the way he spoke to each child, how he laughed with his whole face, how he softened whenever a shy little one approached. It wasn't performance. It was genuine warmth, the kind that can't be rehearsed. And Helena felt something stir inside her, a mixture of admiration and vulnerability she hadn't expected. It was as if the holiday lights around her were reflecting something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Her niece chattered beside her about candy canes and presents, but Helena's attention drifted back to Santa's chair like a quiet magnet. She caught herself wondering who he was outside the costume, his name, his life, what kind of heart sat beneath all that red velvet. The curiosity surprised her. She'd always kept her emotional world carefully balanced, rarely entertaining whims or fantasies. Yet here she was, feeling drawn to a man whose face she hadn't even fully seen. It made no logical sense, and maybe that was why the feeling intrigued her even more. As the line grew shorter, Helena felt an odd pang of disappointment at the thought of the moment ending. She told herself she was being silly, that this was nothing more than holiday sentimentality, but something in her refused that explanation. She found herself standing again, pretending to toss some trash away just to stay nearby. Her heart knew what her mind refused to admit. She wasn't done with this encounter, not yet. And somewhere deep inside, an unspoken pull whispered that the next moments might reveal something she hadn't even realized she was hoping for. When the last child finally waved goodbye and the crowd began to thin, Helena felt her heartbeat shift into a slow, hopeful rhythm. She pretended to check her phone while keeping him in her peripheral vision, watching as he stretched his shoulders and let out a quiet sigh of relief. There was something tender about that small, human moment. The kind of thing you only notice when you're paying very close attention. He disappeared behind the staff door, and Helena felt a pull she couldn't rationalize. A soft whisper inside her urged her to stay just a little longer, as though the story wasn't finished. Her niece tugged on her jacket, asking if they could look at the candy shop next, but Helena hesitated. She glanced at the staff hallway, feeling almost foolish for wanting to see him without the costume. Yet the desire was real. Warm, insistent, tinged with a curiosity she couldn't ignore. It wasn't about attraction alone. It was the feeling that something meaningful had begun, quietly, under the glow of Christmas lights, something she hadn't expected, yet couldn't step away from. She told her niece they'd go in a minute, but her feet remained rooted to the floor. Then the door pushed open, and he stepped out, half in costume, half himself. He held the Santa beard in one hand, revealing a face that matched the warmth she'd glimpsed in his eyes. He was still adjusting the red coat, unaware he was being watched. Helena felt her breath catch at the sight of him, not because he was striking, but because he felt familiar in a way that tugged at her heart, like someone her soul had recognized before her mind ever did. And in that suspended moment, she knew she had to speak to him, even if she didn't know what she would say yet. He noticed her before she could gather her thoughts, offering a warm, slightly shy smile as he ran a hand through his hair. Without the costume, he seemed younger, relaxed, more real, and that made Helena's heart flutter in a way she wasn't prepared for. Her niece waved at him enthusiastically, breaking the tension, and he chuckled, stepping closer with an easy confidence. Helena felt the air shift around them, charged with something gentle but undeniable. She tried to steady herself, but her voice caught in her throat for a moment. It had been a long time since someone made her feel this awake. "Long day?" she managed to ask, her tone light but careful, as if stepping into new emotional territory. He nodded, saying it was exhausting but worth every second. The sincerity in his voice made her chest warm again, and she found herself studying him with a deeper curiosity. He introduced himself, his real name, and it fit him perfectly. Simple and warm, just like his presence. Something about the way he spoke made Helena feel as though she'd known him longer than a handful of exchanged glances. Her niece chimed in with a comment that made them both laugh, softening the moment into something beautifully natural. He leaned against the wall, arms folded loosely, and asked Helena about her favorite Christmas tradition. The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her something so thoughtful in years. She hesitated before admitting she didn't really have one anymore. His expression softened, not with pity, but with understanding, as if he too carried a few quiet losses. For a moment, the noise of the mall fell away, leaving only the low hum of something sincere building between them. And as she met his gaze, Helena felt the delicate beginnings of connection threading through the space between them, hinting that this conversation was only the start of something deeper. They continued talking, their words flowing with unexpected ease, as if some invisible door had opened between them. He shared a childhood memory of helping his mother decorate their tiny living room, describing the mismatched ornaments and the smell of cinnamon tea filling the air. Helena felt herself smiling, not just politely, but with genuine warmth. Something in his story tugged at her, stirring forgotten pieces of her own past. The way he spoke, gentle and thoughtful, made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. And the more he revealed of himself, the more she wanted to linger in this fragile, growing closeness. Her niece soon sat on a nearby bench, swinging her legs and humming to herself, giving the adults their space without even realizing it. Helena adjusted the strap of her purse nervously, unsure why her hands felt suddenly unsteady. It wasn't that she was falling for him. She knew better than to let her heart leap so quickly, but something about him disarmed her. He listened with genuine interest, nodding softly as she shared a memory of baking gingerbread with her grandmother. The scent, the warmth, the feeling of belonging she once had. He understood that too, his expression reflecting a tenderness she didn't expect from a stranger. As he spoke about why he chose to play Santa, how it reminded him of simpler times, how he loved bringing joy to others, Helena felt a swell of emotion she couldn't quite explain. His honesty, mixed with a quiet vulnerability, made her chest tighten in a way that wasn't painful but deeply human. She felt herself leaning ever so slightly closer, drawn not by impulse, but by recognition, a recognition of kindness, of sincerity, of possibility. And in that moment, with the mall winding down around them, Helena sensed that whatever was beginning here was only unfolding its first layer, guiding her toward something she never expected this evening to hold. When his shift officially ended, he glanced toward Helena with a hesitant sort of courage, the kind that comes from wanting something, but not wanting to assume too much. He asked if she and her niece had a little time before heading home, his voice warm, but tinged with uncertainty. Helena felt her pulse quicken, surprised by how naturally the invitation came, and how naturally she wanted to accept it. Her niece beamed, already excited by the possibility of extending the magic of the night. Helena looked at him, really looked, and in his eyes she saw a sincerity that eased her hesitation, so she nodded, letting the moment guide her. They began walking through the quieter hallways of the mall, the holiday decor glowing softly around them. The shops were closing, leaving a peaceful stillness that made every sound feel intimate. Her niece skipped ahead, stopping often to admire ornaments or point at window displays covered in glittering snow scenes. Helena walked beside him, feeling that gentle hum of connection deepening with every step. He occasionally glanced at her, offering a light-hearted comment or a warm smile. And with each exchange, Helena felt her guard soften, piece by piece, warming her from the inside out. As they neared the central atrium, he suggested grabbing hot chocolate from a small cafe that was still open. Helena agreed, sensing the sweet anticipation of a moment she didn't want to rush. They found a cozy table near the decorated railing, where strings of lights draped down like cascading stars. The rich aroma of cocoa filled the air, blending with the faint scent of pine from a massive wreath hanging nearby. Her niece busied herself with a cookie, leaving Helena and him in a bubble of comfortable closeness. And as they settled in, Helena felt the night unfolding in a way that hinted more magic was still waiting to reveal itself. They talked as though the night itself were urging their stories to the surface. He shared bits of his life, simple things at first, like his favorite holiday movie, the traditions his family kept, the reason he volunteered for the Santa role each year. But soon, the conversation softened into something deeper. He spoke about a difficult winter from his past, a season marked by loss that had reshaped the way he viewed people and kindness. Helena felt her heart tighten with empathy, sensing the quiet resilience behind his calm voice. And in that moment, she realized he wasn't simply charming. He was layered, real, beautifully human. Helena found herself opening up too, telling him things she hadn't intended to share. She spoke about old heartbreaks, about the years she spent convincing herself that love was something she could live without. As she talked, she noticed he wasn't just listening. He was absorbing every word with a gentleness that made her feel safe. Her niece leaned against her side, drowsy from the long day, and the small gesture stirred something emotional inside Helena. She felt the pull of contrasting emotions, tenderness for her niece, caution from her past, and an unexpected warmth blossoming toward this man whose presence felt like a quiet refuge. A soft laugh escaped him when she admitted she'd avoided romance for a long time, not out of bitterness, but simply because life kept moving, and she never slowed down to want more. He didn't tease her or offer cliches. Instead, he gave her a look that carried understanding, the kind that reaches deeper than words. The mall speakers played a slow instrumental carol in the background, weaving a gentle hush around them. Helena felt something shift, a subtle but undeniable spark settling into her chest, and as the moment wrapped around them like a warm scarf, she sensed the night was gently guiding her toward a turning point she hadn't seen coming. As they left the cafe, the mall lights seemed to glow a little softer, as though the world had decided to slow down just for them. Her niece walked ahead, twirling the last bites of her cookie in her hand, humming a tune only she understood. He walked beside Helena, their steps falling into an unplanned rhythm that felt strangely intimate. Every so often, their arms brushed lightly, sending tiny sparks of awareness through her. She pretended not to notice, but inside, a tender warmth unfurled, fragile yet thrilling. It amazed her how a single evening could reshape the edges of her heart. They wandered toward the massive Christmas tree at the center of the mall, its lights shimmering in a harmony of gold and emerald. The air around it felt enchanted, as if the tree itself held memories of every wish whispered beneath its branches. He paused, looking up at the star on top before glancing at Helena with a thoughtful softness. He asked her what she hoped for this holiday. Not presents, not obligations, but something real. The question caught her breath, settling into the quiet places inside her. She tried to answer, but emotion tightened her throat, revealing more vulnerability than she expected to show. Instead of speaking, she simply looked at him, and he seemed to understand the words she couldn't quite form. Her niece tugged at her hand, wanting to see a nearby display, so Helena stepped aside with her, but her gaze lingered on him. Something in his expression told her he felt the shift too, that unspoken moment where lightness deepens into possibility. And as they stood near the glowing tree, wrapped in the soft hush of closing time, Helena sensed the night would not end here. There was something still unfolding between them, gently pulling her toward whatever came next. As they stepped out into the cool night air, the world outside the mall felt quieter, almost sacred. The parking lot lights shimmered against the damp pavement, reflecting a soft glow that made everything look a little more magical. Helena wrapped her niece's scarf a bit tighter, her heart still dancing from the moments they'd just shared. He walked beside them with his hands tucked into his coat pockets, glancing at Helena with a warmth that felt both new and strangely familiar. There was an ease between them now, the kind that settles in when two people finally stop resisting a connection, and Helena sensed the night still had one more gift to offer. When they reached their cars, neither of them seemed ready to say goodbye. Her niece climbed into the back seat, already half asleep, leaving a quiet bubble of space around the two adults. He laughed softly, admitting he didn't want the evening to end. Helena felt her cheeks warm, surprised by how much she felt the same. She hadn't expected anything tonight. Certainly not this gentle spark that made her chest flutter. He leaned slightly closer, his breath visible in the cold air, and asked if they could see each other again. The sincerity in his voice wrapped around her like a tender promise. Helena nodded, feeling a soft, almost youthful excitement blossom inside her, the kind she hadn't felt in years. They exchanged numbers, their fingers brushing lightly, sending a ripple through the space between them. Her niece stirred in the back seat, reminding Helena of her world, the responsibilities, the routines, the life she'd built. But for the first time in a long while, she felt something new tugging at her heart. Hope, possibility, a quiet spark of something waiting to grow. As he stepped back toward his car, the glow of the mall lights reflected in his smile, hinting that this was only the beginning of something tender and unexpected. Helena sat in the driver's seat for a moment before starting the car, watching him walk a few steps away and then turn back, offering one last smile. It was small, almost shy, but it carried a warmth that settled deep in her chest. Her niece mumbled sleepily, reminding Helena that life wouldn't pause just because her heart suddenly felt awake again. But even as she drove out of the parking lot, she kept replaying the softness in his eyes, the gentleness in his voice, the way he made the world feel less heavy for a little while, and the truth surprised her. She didn't want that feeling to fade. At a red light, Helena glanced at her niece through the mirror, the child's head resting against the window, blissfully unaware of the shift happening in her aunt's world. Helena felt a small smile tug at her lips, one she couldn't suppress even if she wanted to. It wasn't just attraction. She knew the difference. This felt like a door opening, something she didn't even realize had been closed. Her heart fluttered with a mixture of excitement and fear, but for once, she didn't try to push it away. Instead, she let herself wonder who he truly was beyond the red suit, and what this connection might become. By the time she reached home, the night air had settled into a peaceful stillness. She carried her niece inside, tucked her into bed, and found herself lingering in the doorway, replaying the evening's moments like cherished ornaments pulled from an old box. She realized she felt lighter, as if some long-forgotten piece of herself had quietly returned. When her phone buzzed, a simple message from him asking if they got home safely, her pulse quickened. It was thoughtful, gentle, exactly like him. And as she typed her reply, she sensed that the story between them was only beginning to weave its first threads. Later that night, Helena settled onto the couch with a blanket draped over her shoulders, the soft glow of the Christmas tree filling the room. The ornaments shimmered like tiny fragments of memory, each one reflecting a different chapter of her life. She held her phone, reading his last message again, not because it was romantic, but because it felt sincere, real, the kind of small gesture that carries more weight than grand declarations. A gentle warmth spread through her chest, and she found herself whispering a quiet thank you to the universe for nudging her toward the mall that evening. Something inside her felt beautifully, unexpectedly alive. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the silence of the house wrap around her. It had been years since she'd allowed herself to feel hopeful in this way, unguarded, open to possibility, willing to imagine new beginnings. The tenderness of that thought brought a slight sting behind her eyes, a mix of joy and disbelief. She wasn't sure where this connection would lead, or what it might grow into, but for the first time in a long time, uncertainty didn't feel frightening. It felt inviting, like the soft glow of a candle leading her toward something warm and good. Before going to bed, she walked to the window and looked out at the softly lit street, the decorations shimmering like tiny promises. She pressed her hand gently against the glass, feeling the coolness beneath her palm, grounding her in the sweetness of the moment. Tonight had started like any ordinary outing, yet it had brought her something rare, something she thought she'd outgrown, the spark of a new beginning. As she turned off the lights and headed down the hallway, she carried that spark with her, glowing quietly in her chest, ready to brighten the days ahead in ways she hadn't dared hope for.